Emma Hayes smoothed down her navy blazer for the third time as the elevator climbed toward the 20th floor. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman who looked far more confident than she felt. At 28, she had worked incredibly hard to reach this moment. Landing the position of marketing director at Sterling Industries was not just a career milestone. It was a lifeline for her and her 4-year-old daughter, Sophie. The elevator chimed softly, and the doors slid open to reveal a stunning reception area. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with morning light. The Sterling Industries logo gleamed in brushed silver against a marble wall. A young receptionist with perfect posture smiled warmly at her. "You must be Emma Hayes. Welcome to Sterling Industries. Mr. Blake is expecting you in the main conference room, third door on your right." Emma nodded her thanks, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she walked down the corridor. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had prepared for this. Meeting for days, rehearsing her ideas and strategies until they flowed naturally. Everything depended on making a strong first impression with the CEO. She reached the conference room and paused, taking one last steadying breath before pushing open the heavy wooden door. The room was already filled with several members of the executive team, all engaged in quiet conversation. But Emma's attention was immediately drawn to the man standing at the head of the table, his back to her as he gazed out the window at the city skyline. Even from behind, something about him seemed familiar. The set of his broad shoulders, the way he held himself with quiet authority, the dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. When he turned around, Emma's world tilted on its axis. Those eyes, those impossibly blue eyes that had haunted her dreams for 5 years. The strong jawline, the slight dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. It was him, the man from Chicago. The man who had given her the most magical night of her life and then vanished. Like smoke. The man who was the father of her daughter. "Ah, you must be Emma Hayes." His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep and warm like aged whiskey. "I'm Jonathan Blake. Welcome to Sterling Industries." He extended his hand, and Emma forced her legs to carry her forward. When their fingers touched, she felt that same electric spark that had ignited between them 5 years ago. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew he felt it too. But there was no recognition in his gaze, only professional politeness tinged with something she could not quite identify. "Thank you, Mr. Blake. I'm honored to be here." Her voice came out steadier than she expected, though her hand trembled slightly in his. "Please call me Jonathan." He gestured to an empty chair near the head of the table. "Have a seat. We're just about to begin."
Nice.
As Emma settled into her chair, her mind raced back to that night in Chicago. She had been attending her first major marketing conference, nervous and excited in equal measure. The hotel bar had been crowded with conference attendees, and she had been nursing a glass of wine alone when he appeared beside her. They had not exchanged last names. It had seemed romantic at the time, mysterious. Just Emma and John, 2 people, connecting without the weight of their everyday lives intruding. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, their conversation flowing as easily as the wine. When he asked her to walk with him along the Chicago River, she said yes without hesitation. The city lights had reflected off the water like scattered diamonds. They walked and talked, their hands eventually finding each other as naturally as breathing. When he kissed her under the glow of a street lamp, Emma felt something shift deep in her chest. This was not just attraction. It was recognition, as if her soul had been searching for his without knowing it. One night had turned into a lifetime in her heart. But when she woke the next morning in his hotel room, he was gone. No note, no number, just the lingering scent of his cologne on the pillow and the memory of his whispered promises in the dark. 3 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. She tried desperately to find him, searching through conference attendee lists, social media, even hiring a private investigator with money she could barely spare. But John from Chicago had disappeared without a trace, as if he had never existed at all. Emma. Jonathan's voice pulled her back to the present. "I asked if you had a chance to review the quarterly reports I sent over." She blinked, forcing herself to focus. "Yes, absolutely. I have several ideas about how we can improve our market positioning, particularly with the younger demographic. For the next hour, Emma presented her strategies and fielded questions from the executive team. Despite the turmoil in her heart, her professional instincts took over. She had worked too hard to let personal shock derail her now. Jonathan listened, intently, occasionally nodding or jotting down notes. Several times she caught him watching her with an expression she could not read. When the meeting concluded, the other executives filed out, but Jonathan remained. "Emma, could you stay for a moment? I'd like to discuss something with you." Her pulse quickened as the door closed behind the last departing executive. They were alone now, just the two of them in the spacious conference room. Jonathan leaned against the table, his blue eyes studying her with unsettling intensity. "Your ideas are impressive. Exactly what this company needs." He paused, tilting his head slightly. "Have we met before? There's something about you that feels familiar?" Emma's throat went dry. This was her chance. She could tell him everything right now. About that night in Chicago, about Sophie, their daughter with his blue eyes and her auburn hair, about the years she had spent looking for him while raising their child alone. But fear clamped down on her words. What if he did not believe her? What if he thought she had orchestrated this job to trap him? She had heard the rumors about Jonathan Blake. Billionaire CEO, confirmed bachelor, intensely private about his personal life. What if he thought she wanted his money, or tried to take Sophie away from her? "I don't think so," she heard herself say. "I have one of those faces, I suppose. People often think they know me." Something flickered across his expression, disappointment perhaps, or relief. She could not tell. "Well, regardless, I'm glad to have you on the team. I think we are going to work very well together." As Emma left the conference room, her legs felt weak. She made it to the women's restroom just in time, locking herself in a stall and pressing her forehead against the cool metal door. What had she done? She should have told him. She had promised herself that if she ever found Sophie's father, she would tell him the truth immediately. But seeing him again, feeling that same overwhelming connection, knowing he was now her boss, everything had become impossibly complicated. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her mother, who was watching Sophie today. "How did the first day go? Sophie wants to know when Mommy will be home." Emma smiled, despite the chaos in her heart. Sophie, her beautiful, brilliant, funny little girl, who asked a million questions and loved strawberries and insisted on wearing her princess dress to the grocery store. The little girl who deserved to know her father. Tomorrow, Emma decided, she would find the right moment tomorrow to tell Jonathan the truth. But as she returned to her new office and tried to focus on work, she could not shake the feeling that fate had brought her here for a reason. After 5 years of searching, she had finally found him. Now she just had to find the courage to tell him he was a father. That evening, as Emma tucked Sophie into bed, her daughter looked up at her with those striking blue eyes. "Mommy, did you have a good day at your new job?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Did you meet your boss? Is he nice?" Emma brushed a strand of hair from Sophie's forehead, her heart aching with love and uncertainty. "Yes, baby, he is very nice. Does he have a family?" The innocent question pierced Emma's heart. "I don't know, Sophie, but maybe we will find out soon." As Sophie drifted off to sleep, Emma sat beside her bed in the darkness, watching her daughter's peaceful face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, but tonight she allowed herself to remember. That magical night in Chicago when just for a few hours, she had felt completely understood and cherished. She had no way of knowing that Jonathan Blake was sitting in his penthouse across the city, unable to stop thinking about his new marketing director and the inexplicable feeling that his life had just changed forever. The following weeks passed. In a blur of meetings, presentations, and stolen glances, Emma threw herself into her work with fierce determination, proving her worth to the Sterling Industries team. Her marketing campaigns were innovative and effective, earning praise from colleagues and clients alike. But working closely with Jonathan Blake was becoming increasingly difficult. Every morning, he brought her coffee. Black with 1 sugar, exactly how she liked it. She had never told him her preference, yet somehow he knew. When she worked late, he would appear at her office door with takeout from the Italian restaurant down the street, insisting she needed to eat. Their conversations flowed as easily as they had that night in Chicago. covering everything from business strategy to classic literature to their favorite childhood memories. Almost every memory, Emma corrected herself. She carefully edited out any mention of Sophie, though it killed her to hide such a fundamental part of her life. She kept no photos on her desk, made vague references to evening plans without details, and always left the office by 5:30 sharp to pick up her daughter from her mother's house. Jonathan noticed. Of course he noticed. He was observant in ways that made Emma's heart race and her anxiety spike in equal measure. "You are very disciplined about your schedule," he commented one afternoon as they reviewed quarterly projections in his office. "Most of my executives work until 7 or 8. Emma kept her eyes on the spreadsheet in front of her. "I find I am more productive when I maintain work-life balance. Efficiency over hours logged. Smart." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What do you do with all that carefully protected personal time? Husband? Boyfriend?" Her fingers tightened on her pen. "No husband. No boyfriend. Just family commitments. Family commitments." He repeated the phrase slowly, as if testing its weight. "You are very private about your personal life, Emma. It makes me curious." She forced herself to meet his gaze, those blue eyes that Sophie had inherited. "Some things are worth keeping private, Jonathan. Not everything needs to be shared." Something shifted in his expression, a hint of hurt that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Of course, I respect that." But Emma could see she had wounded him, and that knowledge sat heavy in her chest. She wanted to share everything with him. Wanted to tell him about Sophie's first day of kindergarten last month, how their daughter had been so brave even though she was nervous. Wanted to show him the drawings Sophie had made of their family, 2 stick figures holding hands with a blank space between them where Sophie always said her daddy would go someday. "I should get back to work," Emma said softly, gathering her papers. As she stood, her phone slipped from her pocket, clattering to the floor. Jonathan bent to retrieve it at the same moment she did, and their hands collided. The phone screen had lit up with the impact, displaying her lock screen photos. Sophie, laughing at the park, her blue eyes sparkling, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. Jonathan's hand froze. Emma watched the color drain from his face as he stared at the image. She snatched the phone quickly, but it was too late. He had seen that child. His voice came out rough, strangled. "Who is she?" Emma's mouth went dry. "Jonathan, I can explain. Those eyes." He stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "She has my eyes. Exactly my eyes. Please, let me explain." "Ow!" "Old is she?" His voice was deadly quiet now, controlled in a way that terrified her more than anger would have. 4. She just turned 4 last month." The silence that followed was suffocating. Emma watched emotions flicker across Jonathan's face. Shock, realization, disbelief, and something that looked like devastation. 4 years old? He turned away from her, bracing his hands on his desk. "We met 5 years ago, in Chicago." It was not a question, but Emma answered anyway. "Yes, you knew." His shoulders tensed. "All this time, you have been working here, sitting across from me in meetings, and you knew." "I tried to find you." Emma's voice broke. "After that night, I tried everything. You told me your name was John. I searched every John from that conference. I hired an investigator. You had disappeared completely." Spun to face her, and the raw pain in his eyes made her chest ache. "And when you walked into this building, when you saw me in that conference room, you knew then?" "Yes." "Why did you not tell me?" Each word was measured, precise. "Why did you lie to my face when I asked if we had met before?" Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "I was afraid. Afraid you would think I engineered this job to trap you. Afraid you would try to take her from me. Afraid you would not believe she was yours. Take her." Jonathan's voice rose. "You have had for years with my daughter. For years of birthdays and first words and bedtime stories. And you think I would try to take her away from you?" "My father left when I was 6, Emma said quietly. "Just walked away one day and never looked back. I could not bear the thought of Sophie growing up wondering why her father did not want her. It seemed easier to let her think you did not know about her than to risk you rejecting her." Jonathan's expression softened slightly, but the hurt remained. "So you made that decision for both of us? Decided I was not worthy of knowing I had a child?" "No, that's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Emma?" He stepped closer and she could see unshed tears glittering in his eyes. "Because from where I stand, You kept my daughter a secret for weeks while we worked together. While I brought you coffee and stayed late helping you with projects. While I started to fall in love with you all over again, without even remembering why you felt so familiar. Emma's breath caught. You remember that night? Not clearly? Not until now? His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped. I was drugged that night. Someone slipped something into my drink at the conference. I woke up alone in my hotel room with fragmented memories of a woman with kind eyes and a laugh like music. I thought it had been a dream until I found the note you left. Note, I did not leave a note. You did not write, "Meet me by the river at sunset"? Pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos until he found one of a hotel notepad with those exact words scrawled across it. Emma shook her head. That was not my handwriting. Jonathan, I woke up and you were gone. No note, no number, nothing. Understanding dawned on both their faces simultaneously. Someone had set them up, separated them deliberately. What, who, and why would have to wait. Right now, more important things demanded their attention. I have a daughter, Jonathan said, the words seeming to hit him anew. We have a daughter. Her name is Sophie. Sophie Emma Hayes. Emma pulled out her phone with trembling hands, opening her photo gallery. She is smart and funny and kind. She loves strawberries and dinosaurs and asks why about everything. She has your eyes and your smile. And she asks about her daddy every single day. Jonathan took the phone, scrolling through image after image of Sophie. At the park, blowing out birthday candles, dressed as a scientist for career day at preschool. In every photo, Emma could see him recognizing himself in their daughter's features. I want to meet her, he said hoarsely. Please, Emma. I have already missed so much. Do not make me miss any more. Before Emma could respond, her phone rang in Jonathan's hand. Her mother's name flashed on the screen. Emma answered, putting it on speaker. Emma, honey, I am so sorry to call during work, but Sophie is running a fever. The school nurse called. Can you come get her? Emma's maternal instincts kicked into overdrive. I am leaving right now. Tell her mommy is coming. She ended the call and looked at Jonathan. I have to go. We can talk about this later. I am coming with you. Jonathan, I do not think that's a good idea right now. She is sick and confused, and this is all so overwhelming. Emma, he caught her hand. I have missed for years. I am not missing this. Let me help, please. Something in his expression, the desperate hope mixed with determination, made Emma's resistance crumble. Okay, but we take my car, and you let me explain things to Sophie first. The drive to Sophie's kindergarten was tense. Emma gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing with how to handle this situation. Beside her, Jonathan sat rigid, his hands clenched in his lap. Tell me about her, he said quietly. Everything. I want to know everything, so Emma talked. She told him about Sophie's difficult birth, how she had been so tiny but so fierce, about sleepless nights and first smiles, and the day Sophie took her first steps. She told him about their daughter's obsession with space, how she wanted to be an astronaut who studied stars. She talked about Sophie's kindness, how she always shared her snacks with kids who forgot theirs, and her stubbornness, inherited from both parents. By the time they reached the school, Jonathan was openly crying. I should have been there, for all of it. You are here now, Emma said softly. That's what matters. Inside the nurse's office, Sophie lay on a small cot, her face flushed with fever. When she saw Emma, she held out her arms. Mommy, Emma scooped her up, pressing her lips to Sophie's forehead to gauge her temperature. Oh, baby girl, you are burning up. My tummy hurts, Sophie whimpered. I know, sweetheart. We are going to take you home and get you all better. Emma turned slightly, revealing Jonathan standing in the doorway. Sophie, there is someone I want you to meet. This is Jonathan. He works with Mommy. Sophie peered at him through fever-glazed eyes. Then, with the startling perception children sometimes possess, she said, You have eyes like mine. Jonathan's breath caught. He moved closer, kneeling so he was at Sophie's eye level. Yes, I do. We have the same color eyes. That is pretty special, is not it? Are you my daddy? The question was so simple, so direct, so completely Sophie. Emma's heart stopped. She and Jonathan locked eyes over their daughter's head. He looked to her for permission, and she gave the smallest nod. "Yes," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Sophie. I am your daddy." Sophie studied him for a long moment. Then, despite her fever and discomfort, she smiled. "I knew you would come someday. Mommy said you would." Jonathan looked at Emma with such gratitude and love that she felt her own tears start to fall. "Your mommy was right. And now that I am here, I am never leaving. Is that okay with you?" "Okay," Sophie said simply. Then, with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old, she added, "But I do not feel good, so can we go home now?" The tension broke, and both adults laughed through their tears. "Yes, baby. Let's get you home." At Emma's apartment, Jonathan carried Sophie inside while Emma unlocked the door. It was a modest 2-bedroom place, but clean and cheerful, filled with Sophie's artwork and photos. Jonathan's eyes took in everything hungrily. This glimpse into the life his daughter had lived without him. Emma settled Sophie on the couch with a cool cloth on her forehead and children's fever medication. Within minutes, the medicine and exhaustion pulled Sophie into sleep. Jonathan sat on the floor beside the couch, simply watching their daughter breathe. "I was so angry," he said quietly. "When I saw her picture on your phone, I felt betrayed and hurt and cheated out of something precious. Understand, I would feel the same way. But seeing her, hearing her voice, the way she just accepted me," he shook his head in wonder. "Emma, she is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And I know now why you were afraid. I can see it in the way you look at her. She is your whole world. The thought of losing her or sharing her must have been terrifying." "It was," Emma admitted. "It still is. But she deserves to have you in her life. I was wrong to keep you away, even out of fear." Jonathan reached for her hand. "We both made mistakes. I should have tried harder to find you after that night. Should have questioned why someone might have drugged me and separated us. But we have a chance now to do better." "To be better? For her, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be Sophie's father. Not just in name, but in every way that matters. I want to learn her favorite bedtime story, and which vegetables she hates, and how she likes her sandwiches cut. I want to be there when she is sick, and when she has nightmares, and when she graduates from kindergarten next year. And us." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "What about us?" Jonathan stood, pulling her up with him. His hands framed her face gently. "That night in Chicago, even through the fog of whatever drug they gave me, I knew you were special. These past weeks working with you, I have felt that same connection growing stronger. Now, knowing we created this incredible little person together, how could I not want to explore what we could be?" "It is complicated," Emma said, even as she leaned into his touch. "We work together. We have a daughter. There is so much at stake. Then we will be careful. We will be smart. We will put Sophie first in everything." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But Emma, I am not letting you disappear again. Either of you? You are both mine now, and I take care of what is mine." Before Emma could respond, Sophie stirred on the couch. "Daddy?" Her small voice was sleepy and hoarse. Jonathan was at her side instantly. "I am here, sweetheart. Will you still be here when I wake up? Or will you disappear like in my dreams?" Emma watched Jonathan's expression crumble at the evidence of how much Sophie had longed for him. He took their daughter's small hand in his. "I promise you, Sophie, I will be here when you wake up. And tomorrow, and every day after that. Daddy is never leaving you again." Satisfied, Sophie's eyes drifted closed once more. Emma moved to sit beside Jonathan, and together they kept vigil over their sleeping daughter. To people whose lives had collided by chance, been torn apart by design, and were now being woven back together by love. The weeks following Sophie's illness and Jonathan's revelation transformed Emma's life in ways she had never imagined. True to his word, Jonathan had been present every single day. He rearranged his schedule to have breakfast with Sophie before she went to kindergarten, attended parent-teacher conferences, and learned her elaborate bedtime routine that involved 3 stories, 2 songs, and checking for monsters in the closet. Sterling Industries buzzed with speculation about their CEO's sudden devotion to his marketing director, But Jonathan handled it with characteristic directness. He called a company-wide meeting and announced that he and Emma had recently discovered they shared a daughter, and while they were working on building their family, he expected his employees to respect their privacy. The support was overwhelming. Rather than judgment, Emma found herself embraced by her colleagues, many of whom shared their own complicated family stories. Even more surprising was the investigation Jonathan launched into who had drugged him that night in Chicago and planted the fake note. The truth, when it emerged, was uglier than either of them expected. Marcus Steele, Jonathan's former business partner and rival, had orchestrated the entire thing. He had hired someone to drug Jonathan at the conference, hoping to create a scandal he could use to force Jonathan out of the company they had built together. The plan had backfired when no scandal emerged, and Marcus eventually left to start a competing firm. But the damage to Jonathan and Emma's potential relationship had been done. "I want to hate him," Jonathan said one evening, as they sat on Emma's couch after putting Sophie to bed. "For stealing years I could have spent with both of you."
Yeah.
Emma curled into his side, marveling at how natural it felt to be close to him now. "Hating him gives him power he does not deserve. We have Sophie. We have each other. That's what matters." "You are right." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You are always right." "It is incredibly annoying," she laughed, the sound light and free. Over the past month, Emma had watched Jonathan blossom as a father. He approached parenting with the same dedication he brought to business, reading books on child development and asking endless questions. But more importantly, he loved Sophie with a fierce devotion that made Emma's heart swell. And somewhere along the way, they had fallen in love again. Or perhaps they had never stopped. It was impossible to tell where the past ended and the present began, their history and future intertwining like the roots of two trees planted side by side. "Mommy," Sophie's voice called from her bedroom. "I had a bad dream." They both rushed to her room, a coordinated team now. Jonathan scooped Sophie up, while Emma grabbed her favorite stuffed dinosaur. Together, they sat on Sophie's bed, their daughter between them. "Tell us about the dream, sweetheart," Emma encouraged. "I dreamed that Daddy disappeared again," Sophie said, tears on her cheeks. "That he was not real, and I made him up." "Oh, Sophie Bear, I am very real." He took her hand and placed it over his heart. "Feel that. That is my heart beating. And you know what makes it beat?" "What?" Sophie sniffled. "You and your mommy. You two are my heartbeat now." He looked at Emma over Sophie's head, his eyes shining with emotion. "Nothing in this world could make me leave you. Promise?" Sophie asked. "I promise. But you know what would help you believe me?" "What?" Jonathan pulled a small box from his pocket. Emma's breath caught. He had shown her the ring 3 days ago, asking her permission before he proposed to make sure she was ready. She had cried and said yes immediately, but they had agreed to wait for the right moment with Sophie. Apparently, that moment was now. "Sophie, I want to ask you something important," Jonathan said seriously. "I love you very much. And I love your mommy very much. I would like us to be a real family. All three of us together in one house, forever and ever. But I need your permission first." "Would it be okay if I married your mommy?" Sophie's eyes went wide. "Really? We would all live together? Really? I want us to be the Hayes-Blake family. What do you think?" Sophie looked at Emma. "Mommy, do you want to marry Daddy?" Emma's throat was tight with emotion. "Very much, baby. Then yes." Sophie bounced excitedly on the bed. "Yes, yes, yes! Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a princess dress?" Jonathan laughed, pulling both his girls into his arms. "You can wear the biggest princess dress we can find." He turned to Emma, his expression soft. "Emma Hayes, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for lost time and proving that some love stories do get second chances?" Emma cupped his face. This man who had given her so much. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The kiss they shared was gentle and sweet, appropriate for young eyes watching. But it held the promise of their future of late nights and early mornings, of challenges overcome and joys multiplied. Yay. Sophie cheered. "Now, Can we get ice cream to celebrate? It is 9 o'clock at night, Emma protested weakly. But Mommy, I am going to have a daddy now. That is very special. Sophie's logic was irrefutable. Jonathan grinned. She makes an excellent point. I think this calls for ice cream. What do you say, future Mrs. Blake? Emma pretended to consider, then smiled. I say ice cream sounds perfect. The months that followed were a whirlwind of wedding planning, house hunting, and blending their lives together. They found a beautiful home with a huge backyard where Sophie could run and play. Jonathan insisted on a bedroom for Sophie that was twice the size of Emma's entire apartment, complete with a reading nook and walls she could paint with chalkboard paint. The wedding was small and intimate. Held in the garden of their new home, with only family and close friends, Sophie was the flower girl, and she took her job very seriously, even if she did throw most of the petals at once before making it halfway down the aisle. As Emma walked toward Jonathan, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. The magical night in Chicago, the years of searching and single parenthood, the shock of discovering her new boss was her daughter's father. All the fear and pain and uncertainty it had all led to this moment. To Jonathan, taking her hands and promising to love her through every season of life. To Sophie standing beside them, grinning so wide her face might split. To a future filled with more love than Emma had ever dreamed possible. I love you, Jonathan whispered as they were pronounced husband and wife. Both of you. My whole world. We love you too, Emma whispered back. Always. That night, after the guests had left, and Sophie was tucked into her new bed in their new house, Emma and Jonathan stood on their back porch, looking at the stars. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not applied to Sterling Industries? Jonathan asked, his arm around her waist. Sometimes, Emma admitted, but I think we would have found each other eventually. Some connections are too strong to stay buried. I'd like to think you are right. He turned her to face him, his hands on her hips. Though I am grateful we did not have to wait any longer. I want every possible moment with you and Sophie. Have us. Forever. Emma reached up to kiss him, this kiss deeper and more passionate than the one at the altar. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Come to bed, Mrs. Blake, Jonathan murmured against her lips. Let me show you exactly how much I appreciate having found you again. Emma let him lead her inside, to their bedroom, to their future. Through the baby monitor, they could hear Sophie's soft breathing. Their daughter, sleeping peacefully, knowing both her parents were under the same roof at last, as Emma fell asleep in Jonathan's arms hours later. How one decision, one night, one moment could change everything. How secrets kept in fear could become truths shared in love. How endings could become beginnings if you were brave enough to take the chance. She had gotten her dream job and discovered the CEO was the father of her daughter. It could have been a disaster. Instead, it became the greatest gift of her life. Second chances at love, at family, at happiness. And as Sophie grew, she would grow up knowing the story of how her parents found each other not once, but twice. How love, real love, could survive anything. Even time, even separation, even fear. Because in the end, some stories were always meant to have happy endings. Some families were always meant to be together, and some love was simply meant to last forever. The end. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.